Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you are returning tonight or discovering this channel for the first time, this is a quiet place to slow down, learn something gentle, and let the day gradually fall away. Tonight, we are spending time with the pet dog. Perhaps one is resting near the end of a bed, curled beside a couch, or stretched across the floor, where it can keep watch over the room. Its eyes may be closed. Its breathing may be slow. Yet one ear turns when a door moves somewhere down the hall. The nose lifts slightly when a familiar person enters. Even at rest, the dog is collecting information. Its paws rest on the tips of the toes rather than flat against the ground. Animals built this way are called digitigrade, which simply means they walk on their digits. This raises the heel and lengthens the working part of the leg, helping the body move quickly. The claws remain visible because, unlike the claws of a cat, they do not pull back into protective folds of skin. Inside the mouth are pointed canine teeth for gripping and carnassial teeth that slide past one another to cut meat. These tools belong to the same larger family of hunters as wolves, coyotes, jackals, and foxes. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you are welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you are listening from tonight. It helps others find this calm corner of science, one sleepy listener at a time. The dog beside the couch may look completely different from a wolf. Its ears may hang down. Its muzzle may be short. Its coat may be white, black, gold, spotted, tightly curled, or nearly absent. A tiny dog can weigh less than 2 kilograms, while a giant dog may weigh more than 70. Nearly 400 breeds are recognized around the world, although the exact total changes between kennel organizations. All belong to the same domesticated lineage. The domestic dog is commonly called Canis familiaris. It is also classified as Canis lupus familiaris, placing it within the same species group as the grey wolf. That name does not mean a modern wolf slowly turned into a modern pet dog. Dogs descend from an ancient wolf population that lived thousands of years ago. The wolves alive today have also continued changing through time. They are close relatives of dogs, but not frozen copies of the original ancestors. Much of the dog's old equipment remains easy to see. The outer ears can turn toward separate sounds. Muscles along the back and shoulders support running, jumping, digging, and sudden changes of direction. The flexible spine helps lengthen the stride. The nose contains thin, curled shelves of bone called turbinates. These folds are covered with moist tissue that traps odor molecules from the air. A dog takes in scent with each sniff, allowing it to notice food, animals, people, and places that may leave no clear mark for human eyes. Inside a familiar home, scent creates an invisible map. A person leaves traces on clothing, furniture, floors, and bedding. Shoes carry the smell of soil, pavement, plants, other animals, and places visited earlier in the day. The dog may know who has entered before that person appears in the room. Its hearing also reaches beyond ordinary human attention. A dog may react to footsteps outside, the click of a cooling pipe, or movement behind a wall. Yet the most unusual part of this sensory system is where so much of its attention is directed. A pet dog watches human hands. It follows faces. It learns the sound of names, the order of daily routines, and the small movements that happen before a walk or meal. One pair of shoes may mean nothing. A different pair, followed by the sound of keys, can bring the dog to the door within seconds. This is not merely a wild animal that became less dangerous. Across many generations, dogs became unusually prepared to notice human beings, learn from them, work beside them, and seek safety near them. The dog resting on the floor still carries the teeth, ears, legs, and nose of a social predator. What changed most deeply was the relationship surrounding those tools. Before any wolf could begin living beside people, it already belonged to a species built around family, cooperation, and close attention to others. A wild wolf usually grows up surrounded by relatives. The group moving through a forest or across open ground is commonly a family made of two breeding parents, pups born during the current year, and older offspring that have not yet left to form lives elsewhere. Young wolves often remain with their parents for 1, 2, or sometimes 3 years. During that time, they help watch younger pups, travel with the group, and learn how to survive within the pack's territory. This family structure differs from the old image of wolves living in constant contest for control. Relationships within a pack still include rank, competition, and moments of tension. Food can create disagreement, and some animals gain access before others. Even so, ordinary pack life depends heavily on cooperation and familiarity. The parents usually guide much of the group's movement because they are experienced adults raising their offspring. A wolf pack may contain only 4 or 5 animals in one region and more than 10 in another, depending on prey, territory, and how many young have remained. The size changes throughout the year. Pups are born in spring after a pregnancy lasting about 63 days. A litter commonly contains 4 to 6 pups, though smaller and larger litters occur. During their first weeks, the pups stay close to a den while adults travel out to find food. Returning wolves can carry meat in their stomachs and bring it back by regurgitating it for the young. The food is partly digested, making it easier for growing pups to eat. Older siblings may remain near the den, play with the pups, or react when danger approaches. By late summer and autumn, the young animals begin traveling farther with the family. Hunting is only one part of the coordination they must learn. Pack members move along familiar routes through a territory that may cover hundreds of square kilometers. They scent mark boundaries with urine and gland secretions. Howling helps separated animals locate one another across long distances, especially when trees, hills, or darkness block the view. A howl can carry for several kilometers under suitable conditions. One wolf begins, and others may join with slightly different pitches. The combined sound can make a small family seem larger to unfamiliar wolves, listening from beyond the territory. Close contact also matters during quiet hours. Wolves sleep near one another, greet after separation, lick around the mouth and face, and press their bodies together in cold weather. A group surviving winter must tolerate repeated closeness around resting places and food. Conflict that constantly injured pack members would weaken the family and reduce its ability to raise young. Most disagreements are managed through posture and movement before a serious fight begins. A stiff body can signal tension. Lowered ears and a tucked tail may show submission or uncertainty. A direct approach feels different from a curved path. A wolf watching another individual notices the direction of its gaze, the height of its tail, the position of its shoulders, and how quickly it is moving. These details allow the group to adjust before contact occurs. The same attention becomes essential during a chase. One wolf may drive prey toward another. A partner can respond to a sudden turn without receiving a spoken instruction. Each animal must track the prey while also monitoring where the other wolves are moving. This ability has been tested under controlled conditions. In one cooperative experiment, 2 animals faced a platform holding food outside their enclosure. A rope passed through loops connected to the platform, with one end available to each animal. Pulling only one end caused the rope to slide away. Both animals had to pull at nearly the same time to bring the food within reach. Similarly, raised wolves often coordinated successfully with another wolf. Dogs tested under comparable conditions were less successful when their partner was another dog. The result did not make wolves universally smarter than dogs. It showed how strongly wolf survival has depended on close cooperation with members of their own species. Domestic dogs later became especially skilled at directing attention toward people, following human gestures, and waiting for human assistance. The basic ability to watch a partner, tolerate closeness, and adjust behavior already existed within wolf society. Domestication gradually shifted where those social abilities were most easily expressed. For the earliest ancestors of dogs, human footsteps, voices, fires, and food remains eventually became signals worth studying. Some wolves began learning the patterns of a second social species while still watching from beyond the edge of camp. Beyond the camp edges stretched a cold, open world shaped by the final part of the last ice age. Much of western Eurasia contained broad grasslands and low shrubs, with fewer thick forests than cover many of the same regions today. Reindeer, wild horses, bison, and woolly mammoths moved across these landscapes in search of seasonal food. Wolves tracked the grazing herds. Human hunters traveled through many of the same valleys and river systems. A camp might remain beside a rock shelter or dependable water source for several days before its people gathered their belongings and moved again. Around each fire were stone blades, animal hides, split bones, pieces of meat, and sometimes fish taken from nearby water. Smoke drifted into the cold air, carrying the smell of cooked food far beyond the light of the flames. These mobile camps existed thousands of years before farming became established in Western Eurasia. People had no cultivated fields or permanent grain stores. Cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs would enter human-managed populations much later, mainly among communities that built lasting settlements. Dogs followed an earlier path. Their close relationship with people developed among hunter-gatherers who carried their tools, clothing, food supplies, and portable shelter through a changing landscape. Any wolf living near them had to follow moving camps and unpredictable hunting success. The oldest securely identified dogs now provide several clear points within this long history. One came from Pınarbaşı, a rock shelter in present-day Turkey. Its remains date to about 15,800 years ago. Far to the northwest, another dog lived near Gough's Cave in what is now southwest England, around 14,300 years ago. More than 3,000 kilometers separated the two places in a straight line. Later dogs from Padina and Vlasak, two settlements beside the Danube River in present-day Serbia, added evidence from the Mesolithic period. Mesolithic means Middle Stone Age. It describes a time after the coldest Ice Age conditions, when many European communities still lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants. Remains from Padina cover a broad span beginning around 11,500 years ago. One dog from Vlasak dates to roughly 8,900 years ago. Bones alone can make these early animals difficult to identify. An ancient dog could have a skull and limb bones that overlapped greatly with those of a wolf. Thousands of years underground also break DNA into countless short, damaged pieces. Researchers recover surviving fragments from dense bone or teeth, then compare their patterns with genetic material from other ancient and modern canids. Canid is the name for the animal family, containing dogs, wolves, coyotes, foxes, and jackals. Nuclear DNA is especially useful because it comes from the cell nucleus and carries genetic information inherited from both parents. Mitochondrial DNA is found inside tiny structures that help cells release energy. It usually follows the maternal line and can survive in useful amounts, though it records only one narrow path through an animal's ancestry. A nuclear genome provides information from across the wider family tree. That broader record placed the Pınarbaşı and Gulf's cave animals firmly among dogs. It also revealed something larger than the identity of two sets of remains. Despite their enormous geographic separation, the two dogs were genetically very similar. Their ancestry belonged to a dog population already spread across Europe and Anatolia during the late Upper Paleolithic, the final part of the Old Stone Age. Genetic models suggest that this population expanded through Western Eurasia sometime between roughly 18,500 and 14,000 years ago. Clear dog genomes therefore appear after the partnership had already crossed great distances and entered several human cultures. The animal at Pınarbaşı belonged to an established population. Its parents were dogs, and earlier generations had already changed enough to form a genetic branch separate from wolves. Ancient DNA preserves the result of that transformation. The quiet evenings that produced it left no genome behind. Only wolves near human fires, judging unfamiliar movement and discovering how close they could safely remain. At the edge of such a camp, two wolves could receive the same warning and make different choices. Smoke reached both animals. Human voices carried across the open ground. The smell of cooked meat, split bones, and fish scraps traveled with the wind. One wolf stopped at a great distance and withdrew. Its body remained tense, and the unfamiliar sounds kept it moving away. The other animal also felt alarm, though its reaction faded sooner. It waited beyond the strongest firelight until the people became quiet. Later, it approached the ground where food had been prepared. A strip of tissue might remain attached to a bone. Fish skin, organs, or marrow could provide valuable energy during a cold season. The difference between these wolves did not require one to be gentle. Flight distance mattered. This is the space at which an animal decides that danger is too close and retreats. Curiosity mattered as well. An individual willing to examine unfamiliar smells could discover food that a more cautious animal left behind. The speed of recovery after fear may have been especially important. When danger appears, hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol help prepare the body to escape or fight. The heart beats faster. Muscles receive more energy. Attention narrows toward the possible threat. Once the danger passes, some animals return to ordinary behavior more quickly than others. A wolf that remained highly alarmed for hours would gain little from a camp after people had gone to sleep. One that settled sooner could investigate the same place while keeping enough distance to escape. This possibility forms the basis of the scavenging, or commensal model of early dog domestication. A commensal relationship begins when one species gains an advantage from living near another without being deliberately managed. Human camps created edible remains as a normal part of hunting and cooking. Wolves able to use those remains gained calories without making every meal through pursuit and capture. The model fits many features of early human life, though no surviving evidence records the first approach in full. Bones reveal what people ate. Stone tools show where carcasses were cut. Ancient DNA can identify later dogs. None of these preserves the exact behavior of a wolf, waiting beyond a fire thousands of years earlier. Other routes may have worked besides scavenging. Hunter-gatherers sometimes could have found young canids and raised them near camp. A pup handled from an early age may learn that familiar people provide food and safety. Such animals might also have alerted sleeping humans when large predators or strangers approached. Wolves and people followed many of the same prey, including reindeer, wild horses, and bison. Repeated encounters along migration routes could have made each species increasingly familiar with the other's movements. A canid traveling near hunters might notice prey hidden by terrain or follow a wounded animal after it disappeared from human sight. People could then tolerate individuals whose presence improved a hunt or warned of danger. Several pressures may have appeared at different stages. Scavenging could bring animals close enough to be observed. A raised pup could strengthen direct social contact. Useful behavior during hunting might encourage people to feed certain animals or allow them near sleeping areas. No formal breeding plan was required at the beginning. The environment itself could sort individuals according to behavior. Wolves that reacted with intense fear would remain farther from camp food. Those recovering more quickly could return often enough to benefit. If they reproduced near human activity, some of their offspring might inherit similar tendencies. Young animals would also learn from daily experience. A pup hearing voices from birth would respond differently from an adult encountering them for the first time. Inherited temperament and early learning could therefore reinforce each other. Across many generations, a local population might become less reactive, more curious, and increasingly comfortable around human routines. The change would begin with ordinary variation already present among wolves. Repeated access to food and safety would gradually make that variation more common. One tolerant animal could learn to live near people during its own lifetime. A lasting domestic lineage required those behavioral differences to pass through reproduction until the animals beside the camp formed a population of their own. A young wolf raised beside people could change greatly during its own lifetime. Regular feeding might teach it to approach a familiar hand. Gentle handling could reduce its fear of touch. Repeated walks, voices, fires, and sleeping places might become part of an expected routine. These learned responses describe taming. A tame wild animal has gained comfort with people through experience. Its offspring are not automatically born with the same memories or the same level of trust. Each new generation may still need to be captured, handled, and taught from the beginning. Domestication reaches beyond the life of one animal. It occurs when a population reproduces around people for many generations, and inherited traits become more common within that setting. Some young wolves may naturally have produced a weaker stress response to unfamiliar human movement. Others may have recovered from fear more quickly or shown greater interest in voices and gestures. Those differences could affect which animals remained near camp long enough to find food and produce young. A mother comfortable around people might raise her pups close to human activity. The pups would hear conversation, smell smoke, and watch moving bodies during the first weeks of life. Their surroundings would shape what they learned. Inherited temperament would influence how easily those lessons were accepted. No single gene could turn a wolf into a dog. Stress response depends on many parts of the body, including the brain, adrenal glands, hormones, and genes that guide development. Social attraction also grows from many interacting systems. Selection could gradually influence when fear appeared, how strongly it lasted, and which sights or sounds drew attention. Changes in digestion and reproduction might follow as animals became more dependent on human food and shelter. A population living around people could still mate with wolves from outside the camp. This movement of genes between populations is called gene flow. A roaming wolf might breed with an early dog, carrying wild ancestry back into the group. An animal born near people could also leave and reproduce farther away. The boundary between the two populations would therefore remain open. Even an incomplete boundary could matter. If most animals living near camps chose one another as mates, their descendants would begin sharing a growing set of traits suited to that environment. Over enough generations, their ancestry would form a recognizable branch. The wolves living today cannot show us the direct starting point in perfect detail. Modern grey wolves have also continued evolving since dogs separated from their ancient ancestors. Their populations have adapted to different prey, climates, diseases, and human pressures. Some have passed through severe population declines. Others have exchanged genes across large parts of Eurasia and North America. A living wolf remains one of the dog's closest relatives, though it is not an unchanged copy of the population from which dogs emerged. Ancient bones create a similar challenge. Several Ice Age skulls once seemed dog-like because they had shorter snouts, wider brain cases, or tooth arrangements that differed from those of many wolves. One came from Goyet Cave in Belgium and was more than 30,000 years old. Others were found at Przedmosty in the Czech Republic, Razbojnicia Cave in Siberia, and Eliseyevichi in Western Russia. Their shapes encourage the possibility that dog domestication began far earlier than the clearest later evidence suggested. Nuclear DNA changed the interpretation of several of these remains. The genetic material inherited from both parents placed them among extinct wolf populations rather than within the branch containing known dogs. Their unusual skulls may have reflected natural variation, local adaptation, diet, age, or wolf lineages that later disappeared. This is why shape alone cannot identify the first dog with complete confidence. Early dogs and wolves still shared much of the same body plan. Their skull measurements overlapped, and their teeth could fall within similar ranges. Genomes provide a deeper record because they compare ancestry across thousands of points in the animal's DNA. By about 15,800 years ago, the animal from Pınarbaşı in present-day Turkey belonged genetically within the dog lineage. Its existence shows that reproduction around humans had already continued long enough to create an established domestic population. People no longer needed to build every relationship by taming a newly captured wolf. Dogs could be born near humans, grow beside them, and produce another generation within the same shared world. That continuity allowed the relationship to take on meanings beyond immediate usefulness. Around 14,200 years ago, one seriously ill puppy survived for weeks under circumstances that point towards sustained human care. One burial in present-day Germany brings that care into unusually clear focus. The site is known as Bonn Oberkassel, near the Rhine River. Around 14,200 years ago, a juvenile dog was placed in a grave with an adult man and an adult woman. The burial also contained objects including carved bone and a piece of red deer antler. These items suggest that the grave was arranged with care rather than formed by accident. Among the remains was a tooth from a second dog. That animal had been older and smaller than the juvenile buried with the two people. Even this small detail shows that more than one dog was connected with the site. The younger dog was about 27 to 28 weeks old when it died. Its body had not yet reached full adult size. The most revealing evidence came from its teeth. Tooth enamel forms in layers while an animal is growing. Once enamel has been created, the body cannot repair it in the same way that living bone can heal. A serious illness during development may briefly interrupt enamel growth. That interruption can leave a visible line or defect marking the age when the body was under strain. The Oberkassel puppy carried several of these defects. They appeared to have formed when it was around 19, 21, and 23 weeks old. The repeated pattern suggested that the animal went through several periods of severe illness, rather than one brief episode. Researchers also examined damage around the mouth and interpreted the full pattern as consistent with a morbillivirus infection. A morbillivirus is a type of virus that includes the one responsible for canine distemper. Canine distemper can affect the lungs, digestive system, nervous system, and the tissues around the eyes and mouth. A sick young dog may become weak, lose interest in food, and struggle to keep enough water in its body. Fever and repeated digestive illness can make movement difficult. For a puppy living with mobile hunter-gatherers, these problems would have been especially serious. The group may have needed to travel between hunting areas, water sources, and seasonal camps. A healthy young dog could follow people or remain near other dogs. This puppy probably needed much more help. Its illness appears to have continued across several weeks. Survival during that time may have required people to bring water directly to it. Food could have needed softening or placing close enough that the puppy did not have to search. Warmth and shelter would have mattered during periods when the animal could not regulate its body as effectively. Someone may also have cleaned the area where it rested and protected it from other animals while it remained weak. Archaeology cannot show the exact hands that performed these tasks. The teeth record that the puppy survived repeated interruptions to its growth. Its young age and likely condition make complete independence difficult to imagine. During the worst stages of illness, the animal would have offered little practical help. It could not travel far with hunters. A weak puppy would have been unreliable as an alarm animal and unable to assist with tracking prey. Transporting or feeding it would have added work for people already living within a demanding Ice Age environment. The decision to continue caring for it therefore carried a cost. The burial adds another layer to that evidence. After death, the puppy was placed with two human beings rather than discarded away from camp. Its position cannot tell us exactly what the people felt. Their relationship may have included affection, ritual meaning, social identity, or several of these at once. The survival of the puppy and the treatment of its body fit a relationship in which the animal had become personally important. By this time, dogs had entered human life deeply enough for a vulnerable individual to receive sustained attention. The Oberkassel grave preserves one small household of the late Ice Age. Beyond it, dogs with related ancestry were already moving through distant regions and living among human groups with different tools, landscapes, and traditions. The dog buried at Oberkassel belonged to a much wider population already spread across distant parts of Eurasia. At Pınar in present-day Turkey, a dog lived about 15,800 years ago. Far to the northwest, another lived near Gough's Cave in Britain, around 14,300 years ago. The two sites were separated by more than 3,000 kilometers. Their human communities were also different. The British dog was connected with Magdalenian people, whose hunters moved through Western Europe near the end of the Ice Age. Their tools included finely shaped stone blades, bone points, and carved objects. The Pınar dog lived among Anatolian hunter-gatherers much farther southeast. Those people used different landscapes, food sources, and local traditions. Even with this cultural distance, the two dogs carried remarkably similar ancestry. Their genomes were more closely connected than the human populations living beside them. Other early dogs appeared in epigravettian settings across southern and eastern Europe. The epigravettian was a broad Stone Age tradition that developed during the later Ice Age and continued as the climate began warming. Its communities made distinctive stone tools and lived across areas extending from Italy toward the Balkans and farther east. Dogs could therefore enter groups whose languages, hunting practices, and family histories may have differed greatly. This pattern suggests that dogs sometimes cross boundaries more easily than people did. A dog might be given during a meeting between neighboring groups. Hunters could exchange an animal known for tracking or guarding. A young dog might be adopted after joining a camp, while small groups of people could carry dogs into another community through marriage or seasonal travel. Shared hunting grounds also created opportunities for animals to move without large numbers of humans changing location. Genetic evidence cannot identify which of these events occurred in one particular case. It can show that canine ancestry sometimes traveled separately from human ancestry. Natural wolf dispersal usually happens in smaller steps. A young wolf leaves its birth pack, travels through available habitat, and attempts to find a mate or open territory. Human exchange can carry an animal across rivers, mountains, and coastlines within one lifetime. A dog sleeping beside a fire one season could live hundreds of kilometers away during the next. A later ancestry movement changed European dogs again. During the Mesolithic, groups connected with Eastern Eurasia moved westward. Their dogs carried ancestry different from that of the earlier Western population. Mesolithic means Middle Stone Age, a period after the coldest Ice Age conditions and before farming became dominant in much of Europe. By around 10,900 years ago, some European dogs already carried a mixture of major Eastern and Western lineages. This mixing shows that dog populations met and reproduced as human communities encountered one another. The process did not replace every local dog at once. Older lineages could continue in one region while mixed populations spread through another. Farther north, an ancient dog from Jokov Island lived about 9,500 years ago. Today, the island lies in the East Siberian Sea, well above the Arctic Circle. The people who lived there survived in a severe environment shaped by sea ice, long winters, and seasonal movement. They hunted animals such as reindeer and polar bears, and traveled across wide frozen spaces. The Jokov dog belonged to an established Eastern or Arctic lineage. Its presence shows that dogs had already entered a world where endurance, cold tolerance, and mobility carried enormous value. Later, Arctic dogs would help pull sleds, carry loads, and connect camps separated by snow and ice. The older partnership made those roles possible. Wherever dogs traveled, they carried abilities that humans could use immediately. Their noses could follow trails hidden from human senses. Their hearing could detect movement beyond a camp. A dog could help locate prey, warn of unfamiliar animals, or provide warmth during cold nights. Over time, some populations also became powerful enough to pull loads and support transport. Human movement gave dogs access to food, shelter, and new breeding partners. Dogs extended the reach of human senses and bodies. Each journey also placed them under different pressures. Arctic cold favored dense coats and efficient movement. Settled communities later offered starch-rich food and permanent shelter. Regional work began shaping size, behavior, and physical form. As dogs followed people into new environments, human history gradually became visible inside the canine body. The earliest dogs would have looked far more alike than the breeds living in homes today. There were no bulldogs with flattened faces, retrievers carrying soft objects, or tiny companions small enough to fit beneath one arm. Most early dogs probably retained the long legs, narrow chest, strong jaws, and thick coat expected from a wolf-like ancestor. Differences were already beginning to appear. One population might have been slightly smaller. Another could have carried a broader skull, a shorter muzzle, or a coat better suited to local weather. Behavior probably changed before the most dramatic body shapes appeared. Animals living around people gained advantages from recovering quickly after sudden movement and tolerating close activity near food. they also had to reproduce successfully within a human environment. Changes in stress response, development, and breeding season could therefore spread even while the animals still looked broadly wolf-like. Some researchers have proposed a pattern called domestication syndrome. This idea suggests that selection for reduced fear can sometimes appear alongside features such as hanging ears, curled tails, white coat patches, or shorter faces. The pattern remains debated. Domestic species do not all develop the same collection of traits, and many dogs lack several of them. Floppy ears can arise through changes in cartilage and development. White patches can result when pigment-producing cells fail to reach every part of the skin before birth. A curled tail may reflect changes in bones, muscles, or connective tissue. Each feature has its own biology, even when several happen to appear within one domestic population. Dog bodies also changed as human food changed. One clear example involves a gene called AMY2B. After its first formal name, it can be understood simply as the amylase gene. This gene helps the pancreas produce pancreatic amylase, an enzyme released into the small intestine. An enzyme is a protein that speeds up a chemical reaction. Pancreatic amylase breaks long starch molecules into smaller sugars that the body can absorb and use for energy. Starch is common in grains, roots, and cooked plant foods. Wolves living mainly on animal tissue had less need for large amounts of this enzyme. Dogs feeding around farming communities encountered a different diet. Cooked grain, porridge, bread-like foods, and discarded roots could provide calories even when meat was limited. Gene copy number became important. Most genes appear as two inherited copies, with one coming from each parent. Some stretches of DNA can be duplicated, giving an animal several copies of the same gene. More copies can allow the body to produce more of the matching enzyme, although the final amount also depends on how the genes are regulated. In one global study, most modern dogs had a median diploid copy number of 11 for the amylase gene. Median means the middle value when the animals are arranged from lowest to highest. Smaller groups connected especially with Arctic and Australian lineages had a median close to 3. Their ancestors spent more time in environments where human diets remained rich in meat, fish, or marine mammals, and contained less cultivated starch. Ancient dogs reveal when this difference became stronger. Several Neolithic dogs carried only 2 or 3 copies of the amylase gene. Neolithic means the later Stone Age, when farming and permanent settlements were spreading through many regions. Those ancient animals lacked the very large copy number expansions common in many dogs today. This timing matters. Dogs had already been living with people for thousands of years before high starch digesting capacity became widespread in certain populations. Starch adaptation therefore belonged mainly to a later stage of the relationship. As farming expanded, people produced more grain and stored larger amounts of plant food. Dogs able to digest those leftovers efficiently gained more energy from the same scraps. Over many generations, the genetic variants supporting that ability became common where the diet rewarded them. Dogs remained adapted to eating animal protein and fat. Their teeth, digestive tract, and nutritional needs still differ greatly from those of cattle, sheep, or other plant-eating livestock. The new enzyme capacity widened the range of foods they could use. A change in human kitchens had become a change inside canine cells. Living near people reshaped digestion slowly enough to be recorded in ancient DNA. A more unusual adaptation appeared much earlier in life, when young puppies began noticing human hands, faces, and gestures before anyone had formally taught them what those signals meant. At about 8 weeks old, a puppy can stand in front of 2 identical containers and face a surprisingly difficult social problem. Food has been hidden beneath one of them. A person points toward the correct choice. To a human, the gesture seems simple. The puppy must do more than notice a moving hand. It must understand that the movement carries useful information about something located elsewhere. A pointing finger does not smell like the hidden food. It does not touch the container. The gesture works only if the puppy treats the person as a possible source of guidance. Researchers examined this ability in a large group of assistance dog puppies. The study involved 375 young dogs. Most were about 8 weeks old, an age when many puppies have only recently begun spending substantial time away from their mothers and littermates. They had received ordinary care and human contact, though they had little opportunity for extensive one-to-one training. Each puppy completed several social and cognitive tasks. In some trials, a person pointed toward the location of hidden food. In others, the researcher placed a small object beside the correct container, or spoke to the puppy using a warm, high-pitched voice. The young dogs followed human gestures successfully from their first trials. They also spent time looking toward human faces. That early success mattered because the puppies had not spent months learning that a pointing hand leads toward a reward. The behavior was already appearing near the beginning of their individual lives. Some puppies perform better than others. Researchers compared those differences with the known family relationships within the assistance dog population. They estimated that more than 40% of the variation in point following and attention toward human faces was connected with genetic differences among the puppies. Heritability is the scientific term used for this kind of estimate. It is easy to misunderstand. It does not mean that 40% of one puppy's behavior came from genes, while the remainder came from experience. Heritability describes differences across a group living under the conditions of a particular study. In this population, puppies with different inherited backgrounds also differed in how strongly they responded to human social information. Experience still mattered. A puppy could improve through practice, become frightened by harsh handling, or learn that one person's gestures were more dependable than another's. The genetic results showed that domestication had influenced the starting point from which learning began. A second comparison made this difference easier to see. Researchers studied 44 dog puppies and 37 wolf puppies between 5 and 18 weeks of age. The wolves had received unusually intensive human care. People fed them by hand, slept near them when they were young, and spent many hours providing direct social contact. This reduced the chance that any later difference simply came from the wolves never meeting people. Even with that experience, the dog puppies approached unfamiliar humans more readily. They made more eye contact and followed pointing gestures more successfully. The wolf puppies were highly capable in other ways. On certain tasks involving memory or inhibitory control, both groups performed at similar levels. Inhibitory control means stopping an immediate response when a better choice requires waiting or changing direction. The wolves could learn about human behavior and form strong relationships with familiar caregivers. Their attention remained more strongly directed toward the physical environment and their own actions. The dog puppies were especially prepared to include a person within the problem. This difference did not require greater intelligence in every area. Selection had changed what naturally captured attention and which interactions felt rewarding. Across many generations, dogs that noticed human direction could gain access to food, protection, movement, and successful cooperation. Their descendants inherited a greater readiness to watch faces and interpret gestures. The human-dog conversation therefore begins before a puppy knows the meaning of a spoken command. A hand pointing across the floor is only one signal within it. As the puppy grows, that gesture joins eye direction, facial movement, body posture, voice, and repeated household routines. A puppy soon learns that human signals rarely arrive alone. A person glances toward the front door, shifts forward in a chair, reaches for a leash, and says a familiar phrase. The dog may rise before the leash is lifted. No single movement has to carry the entire message. The full pattern predicts what is about to happen. Dogs become skilled at combining information from the face, hands, voice, and surrounding situation. A pointing finger may guide attention toward one place. The person's shoulders reveal which direction the body is preparing to move. A change in tone can make the same word sound inviting, uncertain, or firm. Repeated experience gradually connects these signals with walks, meals, play, rest, or departure. Visual access also changes how dogs behave. In controlled experiments, dogs have been more likely to follow a person's gaze when the person's eyes were visible. Some dogs respond differently when a human faces them, turns away, or covers their eyes. A dog carrying food may hesitate when watched and move more quickly when the nearby person cannot see clearly. These behaviors suggest that dogs pay attention to what human eyes and bodies are directed toward. They do not require the dog to understand vision exactly as a person does. A simpler process can explain much of the result. Through experience, the animal learns that a forward-facing person often notices movement, while a turn back provides less immediate information about what is happening. The dog's sensitivity grows through thousands of ordinary encounters. A caregiver looks toward a dropped object before bending to pick it up. Someone faces the kitchen counter before preparing food. A visitor staring directly at the dog may feel very different from a familiar person looking softly from across the room. The same visual signal can therefore carry different meaning depending on posture, distance, and history. Voices add another layer. Human speech reaches the dog as a continuous stream of changing sounds. Words do not arrive with clear spaces between them. The listener must somehow detect which sounds tend to belong together. Brain imaging studies suggest that dogs can notice some of these patterns. A process called statistical learning helps the brain track which syllables often follow one another. Sounds that repeatedly appear together can begin to form one recognizable unit. A word such as walk gains meaning because its sound is repeatedly linked with a leash, a door opening, and movement outside. The name of a toy may become connected with one object through many games. A person's name can direct the dog's attention toward one member of the household. Some dogs learn dozens of spoken labels. A smaller number of unusually skilled dogs have learned the names of hundreds of objects, especially through repeated play and retrieval. Most household communication remains simpler and deeply tied to routine. The sound of keys may predict that someone is leaving. One pair of shoes may be connected with outdoor walks, while another pair means nothing. A metal bowl touching the counter can bring a dog into the kitchen before any food appears. Entering a particular room may predict grooming, medication, or a bath. These signals are often learned without formal training. Psychologists call this associative learning. One event becomes linked with another because the two repeatedly occur close together. Humans are learning at the same time. A person notices which tone brings the dog closer. The dog discovers which bark causes the person to open a door. Both species gradually repeat signals that produce useful responses. Barking became especially important within this shared system. Adult wolves use barks, though they generally bark less often and in fewer situations than domestic dogs. Dogs may bark during play, when isolated, or when something unfamiliar approaches the home. The sound changes with context. Alarm barks are often sharp and repeated. Play barks may be higher and mixed with loose body movement. A dog seeking attention can produce a sound that household members quickly recognize through daily experience. People cannot translate every bark into a precise sentence. Listeners can often identify broad situations from pitch, spacing, length, and repetition. The dog also watches what happens afterward. A bark that repeatedly brings a person to the window may become more common. A quiet glance that opens the door can become a preferred signal when it works just as well. Communication between dogs and humans grows through inherited attention, joined with lifelong learning. Faces, voices, gestures, and routines form a flexible language shared across species. These are the channels people notice most easily. For the dog, the household also contains a deeper record carried through the air, pressed into fabric, and left along every familiar path. A dog entering a room receives far more than a general impression of how it smells. Air carries tiny chemical traces from skin, food, plants, soil, fabric, and other animals. When the dog inhales, part of that air continues toward the lungs. Another portion is directed higher into a separate area of the nasal cavity, called the olfactory recess. This space contains tissue specialized for detecting odor. The root allows breathing and smelling to happen together, while giving scent molecules more time near the sensory surface. Inside the nose are delicate structures called turbinates. They are thin scrolls of bone covered with moist tissue. Their many curves create a large surface inside a space only a few centimeters long. Odor molecules dissolve into the mucus coating this tissue. They then meet sensory receptors, which are proteins able to respond to particular chemical shapes. The activated cells send electrical signals into the olfactory bulb, a part of the brain that begins sorting information about smell. Estimates of the number of scent-detecting cells in dogs vary greatly. Breed, head shape, body size, and the method used to count them can all change the result. The most important feature is the entire system working together. A long nasal cavity may provide more room for folded sensory tissue. Brain pathways compare patterns from many receptors at once. Memory connects a present smell with places, animals, and events encountered earlier. Sniffing improves the quality of the sample. A resting dog may breathe around 15 to 30 times each minute. During active investigation, it can produce several short sniffs within a single second. Each sniff draws in a fresh pocket of air. The shape of the nose helps some odor-rich air remain near the olfactory tissue, while ordinary breathing continues. Exhaled air leaves partly through slits along the sides of the nostrils. This outward flow can stir nearby air and draw new scent toward the front of the nose. The nostrils also collect slightly different samples. When an odor is stronger on one side, the dog can turn its head toward the higher concentration. By repeating this comparison while moving, it can follow a trail across grass, pavement, or a room. A human home, therefore, contains a history that remains mostly invisible to the people inside it. Fresh skin cells and natural body oils mark the route someone recently walked across the floor. Yesterday's clothing still carries information from the person who wore it and the places they visited. A dog near the doorway may detect that another animal passed outside hours earlier. Shoes bring in traces of damp soil, road salt, cut grass, fuel, or the scent of a neighbor's pet. The kitchen holds layers created by raw ingredients, warm food, cleaning products, and the hands that prepared a meal. These smells do not remain equally strong. Heat, air movement, sunlight, moisture, and time gradually change them. A recent trail may contain a clearer chemical pattern than one exposed to wind and rain. Dogs can sometimes use these differences to follow the newer path when several trails cross. A familiar person may become detectable before a key turns in the lock. Air moving through a hallway can carry traces from clothing and skin. The dog may rise, approach the entrance, or begin wagging, while the person remains beyond human sight and hearing. Recognition is not based on one permanent chemical. A person's scent changes with soap, diet, weather, health, and the places visited that day. Beneath those changes remains a familiar combination the dog has encountered thousands of times. Dogs also possess a small chemical sensing structure called the vomeronasal organ. It lies near the base of the nasal passage and responds especially to certain chemicals involved in reproduction and social communication. This system is separate from the ordinary olfactory pathway used to recognize food, clothing, or a familiar person. Together, nasal airflow, folded sensory tissue, rapid sniffing, and memory turn the home into a landscape arranged through scent and time. The human nearby exists across that landscape as traces on bedding, furniture, clothing, and air. Once people learned that dogs could follow such invisible information beyond the household, the canine nose became part of hunting, travel, rescue, and work across the wider world. Long before engines, radios, or metal machines, dogs could extend the range of what human beings were able to detect and do. Archaeology cannot identify one original canine job. The earliest relationship probably involves several advantages appearing together. A dog near camp could hear movement before sleeping people noticed it. Its nose could detect an animal hidden by grass, snow, or darkness. Food remains that might attract larger scavengers could be consumed before they accumulated. During cold nights, a warm animal resting nearby may also have helped reduce heat loss. Some dogs could warn of unfamiliar humans or predators through posture, growling, or barking. Others may have followed wounded prey after it disappeared from sight. These uses did not require a formal training system at first. People could simply notice which animals remained attentive, returned reliably, and helped during ordinary work. Evidence from Pınarbaşı in present-day Turkey offers one glimpse of this shared life. The site contains the remains of small freshwater fish in layers associated with human occupation. Chemical evidence preserved in the bones of dogs from the site suggests that aquatic food also formed part of their diet. The dogs may have been fed fish directly. They could also have eaten scraps, organs, or discarded pieces left after people prepared meals. Either route placed canine survival inside the human food system. A dog receiving regular food had a reason to remain near camp. People gained an animal whose senses could reach beyond their own. Hunting gave that partnership practical value. A person may lose sight of an injured animal once it crosses a ridge or enters thick cover. The dog can continue through scent. Odor molecules left on the ground, crushed plants, small drops of blood, and the animal's own body scent create a trail that remains after visual contact is gone. Speed provides another advantage during pursuit. A dog can move ahead, circle, or reveal the prey's direction through barking and body movement. Social responsiveness helps complete the task. An animal that follows a trail but never returns offers limited help. A cooperative dog can redirect toward a familiar voice, come back with the group, or learn that certain signals mean stop, wait, or change direction. These abilities later expanded far beyond hunting. In Arctic regions, dogs became essential to travel across snow and sea ice. Their feet have thick pads that protect against rough ground and help spread pressure. Dense coats trap warm air close to the body. Strong shoulders and steady endurance allow a team to pull a sled for long distances. This work depends on more than strength. Several dogs must match pace, maintain position, and respond to changes in direction. The team also needs to read the movement of the animals beside it and the signals given by the human driver. The oldest dogs did not necessarily pull sleds. Transport developed later, after the earlier partnership had already made close coordination possible. Human selection gradually shaped dogs for repeated tasks. Many of those tasks grew from parts of the predatory sequence. A hunting animal first orients toward movement. Its eyes may fix on the target. The body lowers during a stalk, followed by a chase. Capture involves gripping, while feeding completes the sequence. Different working dogs emphasize different stages. A herding dog may orient, stare, stalk, and chase livestock while stopping before capture. A retriever searches for an object, picks it up, and carries it back with a controlled grip. A scent hound may follow a trail for hours, while remaining less dependent on visual contact. Training strengthens these patterns through repetition and reward. Breeding can make the underlying tendency more likely to appear in the first place. People did not need to build a mechanical nose or reproduce the dog's social attention. They worked beside an animal already equipped with endurance, scent, hearing, and flexible behavior. Over many generations, they selected dogs whose bodies matched particular forms of work. That process would eventually produce animals so different in size and shape that they scarcely appeared to belong to the same species. A Chihuahua can weigh less than 3 kilograms. A large Great Dane may weigh more than 70. The Dachshund carries a long body close to the ground on short legs. A Greyhound stands high on narrow limbs and can reach speeds near 70 kilometers per hour during a short sprint. Mastiffs were shaped around heavy bodies and powerful heads. The Borzoi developed a long muzzle and deep chest suited to chasing fast prey across open land. In Arctic regions, dogs grew dense double coats that trapped warm air close to the skin. Some companion breeds developed coats so sparse that much of the body remains exposed. All of these animals belong to the same domestic species. Their differences appeared because people repeatedly chose which dogs would produce the next generation. A herder might breed animals that responded quickly to moving sheep. A hunter could favor speed, scenting ability, or a controlled grip. People living in cold climates often kept dogs with thick coats and compact ears that lost less heat. Across enough generations, useful traits became more common within local populations. Some large physical differences can grow from changes in a small number of important genetic pathways. One pathway involves a growth signal called insulin-like growth factor 1. Differences connected with this system have a major influence on body size in many small dog breeds. Shortened legs in breeds, such as Dachshunds and Corgis, are linked partly to extra copies of a growth-related gene that became inserted elsewhere in the genome. This change affects how the long bones develop. Coat length, curl, and texture can also be strongly influenced by a few genetic regions. A whole breed never comes from one gene. Body shape develops through many genes interacting with nutrition, hormones, health, and conditions during growth. Behavior is usually even more complex. A dog may carry an inherited tendency to chase movement or follow scent, while training and early experience help determine how that tendency appears. For most of dog history, regional populations were less tightly controlled than modern breeds. Many were land races. A land race is a local type shaped by climate, work, geography, and the practical choices of nearby people. A mountain dog might breed mainly with other dogs from the same valleys. An island population could remain separated by water. Herding dogs in one region might share a general body shape because the same work rewarded similar movement. These populations did not always follow a written appearance standard. New animals could enter when travelers arrived, or neighboring communities exchanged dogs. This kept many land races more genetically open than later pedigree breeds. The modern breed system developed mainly during the last few centuries. Dog shows became increasingly popular in Britain during the 19th century. Kennel clubs began writing standards that described the desired height, coat, color, head shape, and movement of each breed. Registries recorded parentage. A stud book listed the animals accepted as breeding members of the population. Once a stud book closed, puppies could enter the breed only when both parents already belonged to it. This increased uniformity. A breeder could expect a litter to resemble its parents more closely in size and appearance. The same system reduced the number of possible breeding partners. A genetic bottleneck occurs when a population descends from a limited number of ancestors. Some genetic variation disappears simply because only a small group contributes to later generations. The repeated use of one successful male can narrow diversity further. If that dog carries an unseen harmful variant, the same variant may spread through many family lines. Genes located close together on a chromosome are often inherited as a group. A harmful version near a desired trait can therefore become common, along with the feature people were selecting. This process is sometimes called genetic hitchhiking. The unwanted variant travels beside the useful or fashionable one. Nearly 400 dog breeds are recognized around the world, although the total differs among kennel organizations. This variety includes bodies specialized for pulling, guarding, finding hidden animals, controlling livestock, and living mainly as companions. Human selection created a level of visible diversity that far exceeds the variation found among wild wolves. It also produced breed-specific risks that would become important in later generations. Pedigree dogs now draw much of the public's attention because their shapes are easy to recognize. For most of the shared history between dogs and humans, however, dogs reproduced with fewer written rules around farms, camps, streets, and villages. Those freer populations preserve an older form of domestic life, shaped by human presence without belonging completely to one household. Across many towns and villages, dogs still live outside the closed boundaries of modern breed registries. A free-ranging dog can move through roads, courtyards, fields, markets, and public spaces without constant control from one person. Some return to a particular home each evening. Others sleep near shops, temples, fishing areas, or groups of buildings where food regularly appears. A village dog belongs to a domestic population that breeds freely within one human settlement or region. Its ancestry may stretch through many local generations without written records of parentage. These animals remain domestic dogs. They are biologically part of the same broad lineage as a Labrador, Dachshund, or Shepherd. Their daily lives simply resemble an older form of the relationship, when dogs lived around entire communities rather than inside one household. Food may arrive from several places. A family might leave rice, bread, meat scraps, or fish near the same wall each morning. Market workers may discard damaged food at the end of the day. Dogs search through refuse, feed from carcasses, or wait near kitchens and restaurants. Some catch rodents or other small animals, although hunting usually supplies only part of what they eat. A dog can therefore depend strongly on human activity, while having no single owner. Buildings provide shade and protection from weather. Water collects near homes and businesses. Roads connect feeding areas, and human waste creates calories that would be rare in an untouched landscape. The dog's survival remains tied to people even when nobody places a collar around its neck. Life in these spaces requires careful social judgment. A free-ranging dog may encounter dozens of people during one day. One person brings food, another ignores it. Someone else may chase it away from a doorway. The dog learns to read differences in voice, speed, gaze, and posture. A familiar feeder approaching slowly can cause the tail to rise and the body to move forward. An unfamiliar person walking directly toward the dog may cause it to pause or retreat. Raised arms, sudden shouting, or objects thrown in the past can shape responses long after the original event. Research on free-ranging dogs in India has shown that they respond differently to friendly and threatening human signals. Animals receiving calm calls or gentle gestures may approach and remain nearby. Harsh tones and forceful movement can produce avoidance, barking, or defensive behavior. These responses reflect both the inherited social attention of domestic dogs and the individual history of each animal. A dog that has often been fed by strangers may investigate new people more readily. One that has experienced repeated mistreatment may keep several meters of distance even when food is offered. Their social groups also change with local resources. Several dogs may gather near a market when discarded food appears. The same animals can separate later and rest in different streets. A female raising puppies may tolerate related dogs near a dependable food source, while driving unfamiliar animals away from the den. Males sometimes travel through several feeding areas and join temporary groups. These gatherings do not always function like stable wolf packs. Membership may change from hour to hour. Food concentration, mating opportunities, shade, traffic, and human behavior influence which dogs remain together. Two animals may rest side by side every afternoon without traveling as a fixed group. Another may appear only when one restaurant closes and scraps are placed outside. Village dog populations are also valuable to genetic research. Modern pedigree breeds often descend from a limited number of recent ancestors. Village dogs usually breed within wider local populations and may preserve more genetic diversity. Their genomes can contain traces of migrations, old regional lineages, and mixtures that happened before modern breed clubs existed. That evidence helps reconstruct how dogs moved with human communities. No living village population provides a simple map to one exact birthplace of domestication. Dogs have traveled, mixed, and exchanged genes with other dog populations for thousands of years. Ancient genomes currently show that the origin remains geographically unresolved. Village dogs instead reveal how flexible domestication can be. A dog may survive through a relationship with an entire settlement, learning when to approach people and when to remain at a distance. Household pets represent a more enclosed form of the same ancient connection. Whatever the setting, every puppy enters the world with social abilities that are still unfinished. During a brief period early in life, ordinary experiences begin deciding which people, sounds, surfaces, and places will feel safe. A newborn puppy enters the world with its eyes and ears closed. During the first 2 weeks, warmth, milk, touch, and the mother's body shape nearly all of its experience. The eyes usually begin opening at around 10 to 14 days. Hearing develops soon afterward. By 3 weeks, the puppy is walking more steadily, playing with littermates, and investigating sounds beyond the nest. This early period leads into a sensitive window for social learning. Its exact boundaries vary between individuals, breeds, and studies. Though the broad period begins within the first few weeks and continues through roughly 3 to 4 months of age. The word sensitive means that certain lessons can be absorbed especially quickly during this stage. Learning remains possible throughout life. Early experiences simply arrive while the brain is rapidly deciding what belongs within the puppy's ordinary world and what may deserve caution. A calm human voice can become familiar before the puppy understands any word. Gentle handling around the paws, ears, and mouth can prepare it for nail care, grooming, and veterinary examinations. Brief contact with carpet, grass, tile, rubber, and uneven outdoor ground teaches the body how different surfaces feel beneath the feet. A slowly closing door introduces movement and sound. Household appliances can be experienced from enough distance that the puppy remains relaxed. Friendly, healthy dogs provide lessons in play, body language, and when another animal wants space. Short vehicle journeys can make motion, engine noise, and changing scenery less unfamiliar. Quiet periods alone also matter. A puppy that always sleeps against a person or littermate may struggle when solitude first arrives suddenly and lasts for hours. Very brief, safe separations allow the animal to discover that absence ends and familiar people return. The quality of these experiences matters more than simply collecting a large number of them. A puppy watching a bicycle from several meters away may remain able to eat a small treat, look around, and move closer by choice. That animal is gathering information, while its body stays below a high level of fear. A puppy held tightly beside a loud road may be exposed to more traffic, yet learn that traffic predicts panic and loss of control. Healthy socialization includes room to pause. The animal should be able to approach, investigate, play, or retreat. When those choices remain available, novelty becomes easier to manage. Fear changes naturally as puppies develop. Very young animals often approach unfamiliar objects with broad curiosity. As they grow, caution becomes stronger because avoiding danger is useful for survival. A strange sound encountered calmly at 6 weeks may be accepted faster than the same sound first heard during adolescence. This does not create one fixed deadline. It explains why early, manageable experience can have such a lasting effect. Biology also changes how each puppy responds. Some are born more cautious. Others recover quickly after surprise. Temperament grows from many genes interacting with development. The mother contributes through her own behavior. Puppies notice whether she remains relaxed when a person enters or moves away immediately. Stress during pregnancy and early care can influence the developing nervous system. Good nutrition supports growth, while illness or pain can make touch and movement feel threatening. Littermates teach bite control and social boundaries through play. The age and conditions of rehoming can also change which lessons continue smoothly. Later fear does not always mean that one person failed during puppyhood. Genetics, painful experiences, medical problems, and changing environments can all contribute. Social learning also needs variety. A puppy comfortable with one gentle adult man may still hesitate around a person wearing a hat or carrying a cane. One quiet child does not represent every child. A calm ride in a small car may not prepare the dog for a noisy bus. The brain forms categories by comparing repeated experiences. Several safe encounters with different voices, body shapes, surfaces, and places help the puppy generalize. Generalization means applying one lesson to a wider group of similar situations. The human world contains doors that move, machines that hum, vehicles that pass, and people who appear in many forms. A household dog learns this world through many small moments that remain within its ability to cope. As those moments accumulate, one familiar caregiver may become more than part of the surroundings. That person can begin changing how safe an unfamiliar room, sound, or situation feels simply by being present. A familiar person can change the way a dog enters an unfamiliar room. Researchers study this effect with an adapted form of a test first developed to examine attachment in young children. The dog and caregiver enter a space containing unfamiliar walls, scents, furniture, and sounds. For a short time, the caregiver remains nearby, while the dog is free to explore. A stranger may then enter and sit quietly, or attempt gentle contact. Later, the caregiver leaves for a brief period before returning. Cameras record the dog's movement throughout the test. Researchers watch how far the animal travels while the caregiver is present. They note whether the dog investigates corners, sniffs unfamiliar objects, or remains pressed close to the person. During separation, some dogs wait beside the exit. Others walk through the room, vocalize, or attempt to follow. The stranger may receive a cautious greeting, active avoidance, or friendly attention. The reunion provides especially useful information. A dog may approach quickly, make brief physical contact, and then return to exploring. Another remains highly excited and struggles to settle. Some animals keep their distance even after showing signs of stress while the person was gone. These patterns help researchers examine attachment through visible behavior. One important pattern is called the secure base effect. A secure base is a familiar partner whose presence makes investigation easier. The dog does not need to remain attached to the person's side. A relaxed animal may spend much of the test several meters away, examining the room. The caregiver's availability reduces the need for constant threat monitoring. When something feels uncertain, the dog can return briefly, gather information from the person, and then move outward again. Research has found that dogs may explore more confidently or work longer at a difficult task when their caregiver is present. A stranger does not always produce the same effect. The difference cannot be explained fully by another human body occupying the room. The dog has learned the familiar person's scent, movements, voice, and usual responses across hundreds or thousands of daily interactions. Predictability changes arousal. Arousal describes how activated the nervous system is. When arousal rises sharply, attention narrows toward possible danger. The muscles become ready for action, and exploration often decreases. A known caregiver can help bring that activation toward a more manageable level. Once the dog feels safer, attention becomes available for sniffing, play, or problem-solving again. Researchers sometimes sort behavior into categories described as secure, avoidant, ambivalent, or disorganized. A securely attached dog often seeks contact after reunion and then settles. An avoidant pattern may involve keeping distance from the caregiver despite stress during separation. An ambivalent dog may seek intense contact while remaining difficult to calm. Disorganized behavior can include conflicting or poorly directed responses. These labels describe what happened during a structured test. They do not provide a complete diagnosis of the animal's personality. A dog may behave differently in a veterinary clinic, a crowded park, or its own home. Pain, fatigue, previous training, and the unfamiliar room itself can affect the result. Attachment categories should not become simple rankings of dogs or moral scores given to caregivers. The relationship also continues developing after puppyhood. A dog adopted from a shelter may arrive with little knowledge of its new household. At first, unfamiliar footsteps or a closing door can produce caution. Meals appear at predictable times. The same person offers walks, rest, and calm contact. Over weeks or months, the dog begins following that person through the home and looking toward them when something unusual occurs. Adult dogs can form secure base relationships with new caregivers, even after earlier disruption or separation. Previous experience still matters. Some animals build trust quickly, while others require a long period of dependable care. The ability remains flexible enough for one person to gain special meaning later in life. A caregiver can therefore become a portable part of the dog's familiar world. The house may change. A hotel room, clinic, or new apartment may carry no known scent map. One recognized voice and body can still help the dog organize what is happening. Behavior shows that the familiar person changes the animal's response to uncertainty. Inside both bodies, hormones and other chemical signals may help reinforce that connection whenever gaze, touch, and reunion bring the pair together again. During a calm reunion, the dog's body is responding to more than the sight of a familiar face. Touch, scent, voice, and eye contact can change activity in several chemical systems. One of the best known involves oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone and signaling molecule produced in the brain. It plays important roles during childbirth and nursing. It is also involved in caregiving, social recognition, trust, and some forms of attachment. The effects depend heavily on the situation. Oxytocin can support closeness with a familiar individual, while producing different results around strangers or during stress. It works alongside memory, learning, and other hormones. Calling it a simple love chemical leaves out most of that biology. A well-known experiment published in 2015 examined how oxytocin might operate between dogs and their owners. Dogs entered a room with their familiar people and were allowed to interact for about 30 minutes. Some dogs spent long periods looking toward their owners. Others made less eye contact and moved around the room more independently. Researchers recorded the length of the dog's gaze, along with behaviors such as touching and speaking. Urine samples were collected before and after the interaction. Oxytocin released inside the body can eventually produce measurable changes in urine, although this provides an indirect record rather than a second-by-second reading from the brain. Owners whose dogs gazed at them for longer periods tended to show larger increases in urinary oxytocin. Those owners also responded with more affiliative behavior. Affiliative simply means behavior that supports friendly social contact. A person might speak softly, stroke the dog, or remain closely engaged. The dogs receiving this attention could then experience their own biological response. The researchers also gave oxytocin through the nose to some dogs in a related part of the experiment. Female dogs that received it tended to gaze longer at their owners. Their owners then showed increased oxytocin. suggesting that the interaction could operate as a feedback loop. The dog begins by looking toward a familiar person. That gaze changes the person's attention and may influence hormone activity. The person responds with contact or a familiar voice. The dog receives an interaction already connected with safety and reward. Repeated exchanges make similar behavior more likely during future encounters. This loop can operate without either species understanding the chemistry involved. A dog learns that looking toward one person often produces a reliable response. The person becomes more attentive when the dog's eyes remain on them. Each individual changes what the other does. Human-raised wolves were included in the 2015 study. They had close relationships with their caregivers, yet they did not show the same gaze-linked oxytocin pattern under the tested conditions. The result fits the idea that domestication strengthened prolonged eye contact as a comfortable form of dog-human communication. It does not mean wolves are unable to bond with people. A familiar wolf may seek contact, show distress during separation, and recognize individual caregivers. Direct gaze also carries different meanings in wolf social life and may be used more cautiously. Several limits remain important. Urinary oxytocin measurements show broad change over time and cannot reveal the exact moment when a hormone was released. One experiment cannot describe every dog and caregiver. Some dogs dislike prolonged eye contact. A nervous animal may look away to reduce tension, while another stares because it expects food. The position of the body and the history of the relationship determine what the gaze means. Oxytocin also forms only one part of the process. Dopamine helps the brain learn from rewarding outcomes. Cortisol changes during stress. A familiar scent can activate memories before the person is visible. Touch adds warmth and pressure, while predictable routines teach the dog what usually happens after an approach. The bond grows from all of these systems working together. Even with those limits, the feedback loop reveals a measurable form of reciprocity. The dog affects the human body and behavior. The response it receives then shapes what the dog expects from that person. Eye contact can maintain connection during a quiet moment. Its practical value becomes even clearer when the dog faces a problem, cannot solve it alone, and turns toward the human nearby. A closed container can reveal how differently dogs and wolves respond when a familiar solution suddenly stops working. In a common experiment, an animal first learns that food can be reached by moving a lid, pulling a rope, or pushing part of a box. The task is repeated several times. Each successful attempt builds a clear expectation. Physical effort opens the container, and the reward becomes available. After the animal understands the task, the researchers quietly change it. The lid is fastened in place. A rope no longer moves the mechanism. The box that opened a moment earlier has become impossible to solve. Researchers then measure what happens. They record how long the animal continues pushing, biting, pawing, or pulling. Different movements are counted because an animal trying several methods is showing greater physical persistence than one repeating the same action. The time before the first glance toward a nearby person is also measured. Researchers may note whether the gaze remains brief or lasts for several seconds. Some dogs look back and forth between the person and the container. Others bark whine, or touch the human before returning to the object. This pattern is often called gaze alternation. The animal shifts attention between a desired object and a possible social partner. Domestic dogs commonly look toward humans sooner than similarly raised wolves during these impossible tasks. Wolves often continue working directly on the apparatus. They pull harder, change position, or test another part of the container. When similar problems are presented without a person nearby, wolves also tend to remain physically engaged for longer and may use a wider range of movements. This difference fits the history of each animal. Wolf survival has depended heavily on independent action and cooperation with other wolves. A wolf facing a blocked food source gains from continuing to investigate it. Dogs have spent thousands of generations in environments where humans regularly move objects, open barriers, and control access to food. Turning toward a person can therefore become a practical part of solving the problem. The glance does not always carry one precise message. A dog may have learned that people frequently open containers. Human faces may naturally draw its attention during uncertainty. Past rewards can strengthen the behavior. A person who repeatedly responds when the dog looks toward a door teaches that gaze can produce movement. Physical persistence also varies between individuals. One dog may continue pawing for a full minute before checking the room. Another looks back after only a few seconds. Working history can influence the balance. A dog selected for independent scent work may remain focused on the object longer than a companion breed. Accustomed to close human guidance. Experience still changes every result. A dog raised around puzzle toys may try more physical actions. One that has often received quick assistance may look toward people earlier. Young puppies can show gaze alternation before receiving extensive training, suggesting that domestication helped prepare dogs for this kind of communication. The behavior still becomes more precise through ordinary life. A puppy looks toward a person near a closed gate. The gate opens. Later, a toy rolls beneath furniture. Another glance brings a hand down to retrieve it. Each successful exchange teaches the dog that a human can become part of the solution. This strategy should not be confused with poor intelligence. Social problem solving can save energy and time. People also rely on partners who possess different abilities. One person reaches a high shelf. Another understands a machine. A group succeeds because information and effort are shared. Dogs apply a similar principle across species. The human controls doors, cupboards, leashes, vehicles, and many other parts of the domestic environment. Recruiting that person can be more effective than struggling alone. A dog standing beside an empty water bowl may look toward its caregiver, then toward the bowl. Near a closed door, its gaze can move between the handle and the person. During an unfamiliar sound, the dog may examine the caregiver's face before deciding whether to approach or retreat. Human beings have become woven into the dog's way of handling uncertainty. That arrangement works smoothly, while the social partner remains nearby. Modern household life also contains long periods when doors close behind people, and the dog must cope without immediate access to them. A dog can learn the shape of a morning before understanding any single event on its own. An alarm sounds. The person enters the bathroom, gets dressed, prepares food, puts on shoes, picks up keys, and moves toward the door. After enough repetition, each step predicts the one that follows. The dog may lift its head when the alarm begins. By the time the shoes appear, it may already know whether a walk is coming or whether the person is preparing to leave alone. This kind of learning depends on sequence. The dog does not need to read a clock or understand that it is 8 in the morning. It recognizes a chain of familiar signals. A different shirt, a packed bag, or the absence of a leash can change the meaning of the routine. Several cues may also help a dog estimate where it is within the day. Morning light enters the windows from a familiar direction. Neighborhood traffic becomes louder at certain hours. Hunger follows internal rhythms shaped by regular meals. Bird calls, school buses, nearby doors, and the activity of other animals create repeating patterns. The dog may also learn how long certain events usually last. A person who returns after a brief trip to the mailbox creates a different expectation from someone who leaves for an entire workday. Scent could contribute, because odors on clothing and within rooms change gradually over time. The popular idea that a dog measures absence through one fading human scent remains difficult to prove. Time perception is more likely built from several signals working together. For one dog, the closing door begins a quiet period. It drinks water, changes sleeping places, and settles until familiar footsteps return. Another animal remains beside the entrance for much of the absence. A third becomes distressed only when one particular caregiver leaves, even though other people remain in the home. Researchers often use the broad term separation-related problems because several different causes can produce similar behavior. Clinical separation anxiety commonly refers to intense distress connected with separation from an attachment figure. Estimates often place it in roughly 14 to 20% of pet dogs, although the number changes with the population and the way the condition is defined. Studies that count a wider range of separation-related signs can produce much higher estimates. A camera inside the home may reveal behavior that an owner never sees directly. Some dogs bark or howl soon after departure. Others pace along the same route between a window and the door. An animal may remain unable to lie down for long, even after the house becomes quiet. Scratching or chewing can concentrate around exits. House soiling may occur despite reliable training at other times. Heavy drooling, refusal of food, or prolonged watching of the doorway can also appear. The visible behavior does not reveal the cause by itself. A dog may panic when one person disappears. Another becomes frightened by thunder, construction, or hallway sounds that occur while nobody is present. Confinement behind a gate or inside a room can create frustration. A puppy given little practice with safe solitude may have no experience showing that separation ends calmly. Pain can make resting difficult and increase dependence on a familiar person. Older dogs may develop cognitive changes that affect memory, sleep, and orientation. These different mechanisms require different responses. A food toy may help a mildly bored dog, but provide little benefit to an animal experiencing panic. Gradual practice with short absences can build confidence when the dog remains calm enough to learn. Medical problems need veterinary attention. Video recordings can help reveal when distress begins, what triggers it, and whether the animal ever settles. Predictable routines often reduce uncertainty. A dog that knows where to rest, when food arrives, and how departures usually unfold, spends less energy trying to interpret every movement. Sudden changes can remove that structure. A new work schedule, a household move, or the loss of a familiar person may alter the entire pattern within days. The dog's strong attention to humans makes companionship possible. It can also make human absence one of the most important events in the animal's day. A complete life, therefore, requires more than reunion at the doorway. The dog also needs safe ways to investigate, move, rest, solve problems, and make choices while the people around it follow their own schedules. A well-designed dog environment gives the animal useful ways to spend the hours between meals, walks, and human attention. The exact arrangement changes with age, health, body shape, and working history. A young border collie may need controlled opportunities to follow movement and solve tasks. An older mastiff may benefit more from steady companionship, short walks, and a sleeping surface that supports heavy joints. Every dog still depends on several basic functions. The body needs movement at a suitable pace. The nose needs time to investigate. The jaws and front paws need safe objects to hold, chew, and manipulate. Social contact should be balanced with uninterrupted rest and periods when the dog can settle alone. Regular access to an appropriate elimination area prevents discomfort and makes the daily routine easier to predict. Retreat also matters. A bed in a quiet corner, an open crate, or a room away from visitors gives the dog a place where interaction is unlikely to be forced. Choice over distance can lower tension before barking, hiding, or defensive behavior develops. Walks provide more than physical exercise. A fast route around the same block may raise the heart rate and move the joints through repeated steps. A slower walk allows the dog to pause at a tree, examine the edge of a path, and follow a recent trail for several meters. Urine, skin cells, gland secretions, and crushed vegetation carry information about animals that passed earlier. One patch of grass can reveal which dogs visited, whether one was unfamiliar, and how recently the scent was left. The dog's head may remain lowered for 30 seconds, while very little appears to happen from a human point of view. Inside the sensory system, receptors are responding to complex chemical mixtures, and the brain is comparing them with earlier memories. This type of investigation occupies attention and can leave the animal calmer after returning home. Play uses other inherited systems. A toy sliding across the floor first draws orientation. A sudden turn can invite pursuit. Carrying, tugging, or searching beneath a blanket uses actions that once helped canids locate and control prey. Healthy social play usually contains loose movement and frequent pauses. One dog chases, then the roles may change. A play bow, with the chest lowered and the hindquarters raised, can signal that rough movement remains friendly. Both animals should be able to stop and move away. Voluntary return shows that the interaction is still rewarding. Training can add clarity to the same environment. In reward-based training, an action is followed by something the dog values. Food is common because it can be delivered quickly. Access to a doorway, permission to sniff, a thrown toy, or renewed movement can serve the same function. The reward tells the animal which behavior produced the useful result. A dog that sits before a gate opens learns how to influence the situation. Predictable consequences reduce confusion because the animal can repeat actions that work. Animal welfare researchers often organize these needs through a model called the 5 domains. The first domain concerns nutrition, including suitable food and dependable water. A second examines the physical environment, such as temperature, surfaces, shelter, and available space. Health forms another domain, covering injury, disease, pain, and physical function. Behavioral interactions include movement, social contact, exploration, and the ways humans handle or train the animal. Together, these areas shape the 5th domain, the dog's mental experiences. Modern versions of the model place greater importance on agency. Agency means having some ability to make choices and affect what happens. A dog may choose one sleeping place over another, ask to continue a game, or move away from unwanted touch. The same home can affect 2 dogs very differently. A scent hound repeatedly pulled away from every smell loses access to one of its main ways of exploring. A herding dog watching uncontrolled running throughout the day may remain in a state of constant readiness. A livestock guardian forced into close contact with unfamiliar visitors can face demands that conflict with generations of selection. An elderly dog may avoid part of a home because polished flooring makes its feet slide. A short-faced dog exercising heavily in warm weather may struggle to move enough air for effective cooling. Good welfare grows from the fit between the animal's body, its surroundings, and the behavior available within them. Care allows a dog to understand daily life and take an active part in it. That responsibility has become more complicated because human selection shaped bodies and behavioral tendencies that can make ordinary environments difficult to navigate. Long before a puppy enters a home, human choices have already influenced the body and behavior it will carry. Modern pedigree systems usually allow registered dogs to breed only with other members of the same recognized breed. This creates predictable coats, sizes, and head shapes. It also narrows the pool of possible parents. A particularly successful male may father dozens or even hundreds of litters. Breeders call this the popular sire effect. Any hidden genetic variant carried by that dog can then spread through a large part of the population, including variants unrelated to the trait people admired. Small founding populations create a similar problem. When a breed begins with only a limited number of ancestors, later generations inherit only part of the genetic variation once available. This is called a genetic bottleneck. Reduced variation does not guarantee illness, though it can make harmful inherited variants more common and leave fewer alternative gene versions within the population. Visible body shape can add another layer of risk. Short-faced dogs are described as brachycephalic. The word refers to a skull that is broad and shortened from front to back. Breeds with this shape may include pugs, French bulldogs, English bulldogs, and Boston terriers. Shortening the facial bones does not remove the surrounding soft tissue at the same rate. The nostrils may remain narrow. A thick or elongated soft palate can partly block the throat. Tissue inside the nose becomes crowded into a smaller space, increasing resistance as air moves through. Some dogs breathe noisily while resting because each breath requires greater effort. The same airway also affects cooling. Dogs release much of their excess body heat by panting. Air passes across moist tissue, allowing water to evaporate and carry heat away. Restricted airflow reduces how efficiently that system works, especially during warm weather or heavy activity. Shortened faces can also leave the eyes more exposed. Deep skin folds may trap moisture and create irritation when they are difficult to keep dry. Other body designs carry different risks. A long back combined with very short legs changes the forces moving through the spine. In breeds such as Dachshunds, discs between the vertebrae can harden or weaken earlier than usual, increasing the chance of painful spinal injury. Very large dogs place greater weight through growing joints. Rapid growth can add strain to hips, elbows, and other structures. Giant breeds also tend to have shorter average lifespans than many smaller dogs, even though they belong to the same species. Loose skin or eyelids that turn inward or outward may expose the eye to rubbing, dryness, and repeated irritation. These risks vary widely within each breed. Many individuals live active lives without developing every condition linked with their body type. Selection has also shaped behavior. Some dogs react quickly to moving animals because generations of herding or hunting work rewarded that response. Guardian breeds may remain alert to unfamiliar people entering a space. Retrievers often show a strong tendency to pick up and carry objects. Scent hounds may continue following an odor, even when the handler changes direction. Terriers can persist intensely around small moving targets or confined spaces. Breed history changes probability. It does not determine one dog's behavior with complete accuracy. Early experience, training, pain, housing, and individual temperament still matter greatly. Working dogs require the same level of care as household companions. Assistance dogs, detection dogs, livestock guardians, therapy animals, and police dogs may gain stimulation and structure from suitable work. Their welfare depends on careful selection and health screening before training begins. Rest must match the physical and mental demands of the job. A dog showing fear, pain, exhaustion, or loss of interest needs the workload changed or ended. Close responsiveness to humans can make some dogs continue working even when discomfort is developing. The handler, therefore, carries responsibility for noticing signs the animal cannot explain in words. Improvement is possible through broader genetic diversity, health-focused breeding, and body standards that preserve normal breathing and movement. Veterinary screening can reduce the chance of passing certain disorders into another generation. Behavioral matching helps place a dog where its inherited tendencies have suitable outlets. Early support can prevent manageable problems from becoming reasons for abandonment. Human selection created the remarkable range of dogs living today. That power also made their future health depend heavily on human judgment. The resting pet now carries the results of ancient wolf sociality. Thousands of years beside people, inherited attention, learned trust, and choices made before it was born. Near the couch, the dog shifts slightly as the room grows quieter. A foot moves against the floor. Its eyes open, one ear turns, and the nose lifts just enough to sample the air. The person is still nearby. Nothing unusual has entered the home. After a few seconds, the head lowers again. The body resting there carries many layers of history. Its ears belong to a social animal whose ancestors depended on sound, posture, and movement to remain connected with family members across open land. The nose continues reading the chemical history of the room. It can detect where someone walked, which clothing was worn outside, and whether another animal passed near the doorway. The eyes are unusually prepared to notice human direction. A glance toward the kitchen, a hand moving toward a leash, or a familiar expression can change what the dog expects to happen. Even digestion carries evidence of shared life. Many dog populations gained extra copies of the amylase gene as farming placed more starch-rich food within reach. The body itself may reflect centuries of work. Long legs can support speed. A broad chest may assist endurance or strength. Dense fur can protect against Arctic cold, while a compact body may have been selected for entering narrow spaces. These features developed through human choices made across generations. Early experience then shaped how one individual dog learned to use them inside a particular home. The word choose describes several processes unfolding at different scales. During the Ice Age, some wolves remained closer to human camps than others. Their lower flight distance, curiosity, and ability to recover from alarm gave them access to food and repeated contact. When those animals reproduced near people, inherited tendencies toward tolerance and social attention became more common. Their descendants grew increasingly prepared to notice human behavior. Each puppy still had to build its own relationship. Safe handling made hands familiar. Predictable meals connected one voice and scent with care. Walks, rest, and repeated reunion taught the animal what to expect from one household. Over time, a particular person became more meaningful than a human figure in general. The dog may follow that person between rooms, even when no food is visible. During uncertainty, it can look toward the familiar face before deciding what to do. In an unfamiliar place, the person's presence may make exploration easier. When free to settle anywhere in the room, the dog often chooses a place that keeps the caregiver within sight, hearing, or scent. The exact origin of this relationship remains unresolved. No surviving evidence identifies one camp, one region, or one single path that produced the first dogs. The clearest ancient genomes now show that a dog lived at Pınarbaşı, in present-day Turkey, about 15,800 years ago. By roughly 14,300 years ago, related dogs were already present near Gough's Cave in Britain. Their ancestry had spread across a large part of Western Eurasia and entered human communities with different tools and traditions. The relationship must therefore reach farther back than the oldest securely identified dog. Practical value helped it continue. Dogs could follow trails hidden from human senses, warn of danger, assist during hunts, and eventually help move people and supplies across difficult ground. The burial at Oberkassel shows that usefulness never tells the entire story. Around 14,200 years ago, people cared for a seriously ill puppy through repeated periods when it would have offered little help. After death, the young dog was buried with two humans. Work and attachment could exist within the same relationship. A dog might assist during movement or hunting, then receive care when it became weak. That exchange continued changing both species. Humans shaped canine bodies, attention, and dependence through breeding and daily control. Dogs shaped human routines in return. Their needs encouraged regular movement, caregiving, shared work, and long commitments extending across much of an animal's life. An inherited attraction to people makes the bond possible. Daily treatment determines whether one particular person becomes safe, dependable, and worth approaching. The dog beside the couch hears another small movement. Its head rises once more. A familiar scent and familiar breathing provide enough information. The muscles soften, and the animal settles back into its resting place. Its body remains ready to run, track, warn, or work. None of those abilities is needed now. The room is known. The person is close. Across thousands of generations, one social predator moved nearer to another, and each became part of how the other lives.